I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to this evening's meeting on this beautiful Tuesday, April 6th, 2020. This is the 7th meeting of the year of the Board of Directors. Please rise for the invocation to be delivered by Pastor John Byer, and I'll lead in the pledge. Thank you.
Dear Lord Jesus, we give you thanks and praise and honor for this day that you have made, for us to rejoice and be glad. We thank you for your death and resurrection, for the life that it gives and the promise of the life with you forever in heaven. We ask your blessing on this meeting. We're so thankful we can be back in person, that the changes that have come so we can truly live and interact with one another in this way. We ask your wisdom and blessing on all those who serve, our city directors, the mayor, all who serve here in this capacity. And we ask your blessing on our city, for our fire department, for our police department, for our sheriff's department, for all who serve, that you keep them safe and bless them, all our city workers. We ask that you'd break the bonds of injustice that still exist around our world, that you heal the brokenhearted, that you set captives free, that you show your favor. And we especially ask that you make Hot Springs a place where your glory dwells, and a place where we are known as people who love one another as you have loved us. So Holy Spirit, come, fall fresh on us in this place. Move in this city for your glory and for the kingdom. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll now call this meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Director Aaron Holliday.
Here.
Director Elaine Jones.
Here.
Director Marcia Dobbs-Smith.
Here.
Director Carol Weatherford.
Here.
Director Karen Garcia.
Here.
Director Steve Trusty.
Here.
Mayor Pat McCabe.
Here. This time we'll consider approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda or items to be moved from consent agenda to new business?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve. Director Garcia, seconded by
Second.
Director Trusty. All in favor of the agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Consider approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting of March 16, 2021. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I so move, Mayor.
Director Jones made the motion, seconded by Director Dobbs-Smith. All in favor of the approval of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Recognition of guests. We have two proclamations this evening. The first one is we're going to do is a proclamation on water conservation. City of Hot Springs proclamation. Whereas the abundant supply of clean drinkable water and environmental stewardship are the lifeblood of economic development in the City of Hot Springs and the surrounding Garland County. And whereas the Wyland Foundation is sponsoring the 10th annual National Mayor's Challenge for Water Conservation as a friendly competition between cities in the United States to see who can be the most water wise. Mayors nationwide will challenge their residents to conserve water, energy, and other natural resources on behalf of their city through a series of informative, easy-to-use pledges online. And whereas all residents of Hot Springs and Garland County can participate by taking a simple pledge on the internet at www.mywaterpledge.com during the month of April 2021. Whereas all citizens can help do their part by taking the pledge to promote a water-secure future for generations to come. Now, therefore, I, Pat McCabe, Mayor of the City of Hot Springs, on behalf of the Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2021 as Water Conservation Awareness Month in Hot Springs, and urge all residents to take the pledge at www.mywaterpledge.com to conserve water and protect our environment. A witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city to be affixed on the 6th day of April in the year of our Lord 2021. Just a note on that, we always want to conserve water, and there are times where you believe you can't, but about 8 weeks ago we were forced to conserve water. And in the week of February 20th, or earlier that week, the 16th or so, we had a tremendous amount of snowfall, and we had very extreme cold weather for our part of the country. Pipes were bursting, water was spewing forth, and I talked to the Downtown Merchants Association this morning and led off with that, kind of revisiting that day, or those series of days. You know, we had just put online a month before that or so a 3 million gallon water tank behind Lowe's, and that was depleted. And then we had the water tanks up on the mountains behind us here, behind downtown, that were depleted. And it was a masterful job by the city staff and the utilities water department and the fire department as well, where they worked together with the water department trying to generate water and redirect water through our system, and fire department working a list were known water breaks that occurred at residential homes and going and turning that water off. So it was a very concerted effort amongst the city departments to try to preserve what we had and then rebuild. So it was during that time that I received a number of phone calls, especially on day 2 or 3 or 4, that can I do my laundry? Can I do this? Can I do that? And so we're getting close, you know. Obviously, you know, if they had to do a load, do a full load, don't do a partial load, and only if necessary. So on those given days, we learn to conserve water. And so it's hard to live that way each and every day, though there are people around the world who live that way each and every day. And so always keep that in the forefront, that we lived through a very difficult time, though it was only 4 days, and we can always conserve water. So thank you. Our second proclamation will be the National Community Development Week. We'll present this to Michelle Sestilli, CDBG consultant. Michelle, she's in the audience, I believe. I'll come down to the podium and present this to her. Whereas the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development implemented the Community Development Block Grant Program in 1974 for the purpose of providing local governments for financial resources to assist low and moderate income persons. Whereas the City of Hot Springs has utilized nonprofit and neighborhood-based organizations to address neighborhood and human needs. And whereas the CDBG program has made a significant impact on our community through the creation of skill training programs, new home construction, parks and recreational activities, sidewalk and ADA accessibility improvements, and water, sewer, and drainage improvements. And whereas the City of Hot Springs and other local governments have clearly demonstrated the capacity to administer the CDBG program to identify, prioritize, and resolve pressing local problems. And now, therefore, I, Pat McCabe, Mayor of the City of Hot Springs, on behalf of the Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim the week of April 5 through 9, 2021 as National Community Development Week in Hot Springs, and urge all residents to recognize the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Community Development Block Grant Program. In witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city to be fixed on the 6th day of April in the year of our Lord, 2021. Michelle?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, directors, city management, in joining us and recognizing and celebrating the Community Development Block Grant in Hot Springs. And while I may be the one up here, nothing happens with just me. So I wanted to acknowledge and give credit to all the people and organizations that help us. This is residents, city departments, affordable housing developers, nonprofits, neighborhood associations, public service providers, and a special thanks to Kathy Selman in Planning and Development, Mary Rice in Finance, the Community Development Advisory Committee, and our HUD field office rep that you don't get to meet, but her name is Rhonda, and that those folks, nothing would happen without their guidance and input. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy some of our projects around town this week.
Very good. Thank you. Finally, I received a letter today, or I guess it was last week, from Park Superintendent Laura Miller regarding the proclamation of the 100th anniversary of Hot Springs National Park. Dear Mayor McCabe, on behalf of the staff of the Hot Springs National Park, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and the Board of Directors for presenting the proclamation for the 100th anniversary of Hot Springs National Park and proclaiming March 4th, 2021 as Hot Springs National Park Day. We are honored and grateful to have your recognition and support. We look forward to celebrating all throughout 2021, and we hope you will be able to join us in the upcoming months for future events. Sincerely, Laura Miller, Superintendent. And we have a great partnership with the National Park Service, and specifically the Laura Miller and her staff at Hot Springs National Park. You know, it's kind of a hand-in-glove relationship, and it's just amazing the number of people who come to town to visit the park, walk the trails, you know, look at the architecture of Bathhouse Row and enjoy the new amenities that Bathhouse Row provides. So thank you, Superintendent Miller, for your kind letter. At this time, we'll hear from Mr. Gary Troutman, President and CEO of Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce and Metro Partnership, for his, I guess it's bi-monthly report.
But there we go. Mayor, thank you. Board, appreciate the time tonight. Been a busy month since we last spoke on March the 9th. I think City Manager Burrows shared with you a report prepared this week, and just some highlights of that report. We'll start with economic development projects. We're very pleased to have the first announcements of what we hope will be many this year. Walter Hussman and Chuck Lonius, Waco and Resort Cable, announced that they'd be making a total of $7 million investment for broadband. And I know since we talked about Ritter in the past and commercial, that everyone's asking about residential, and here's a means there for residential service, and we applaud Chuck and Mr. Hussman and Resort for doing this, and I believe they indicated they'd start in June, and this would be going through December of next year, and would involve their footprint in the city limits of Hot Springs. Friday before last, we had two. Don't get spoiled on these, by the way, but we had our second big announcement in a short amount of time, Fiber Pro. Appreciate the mayor coming and speaking at that event. 70 new jobs, $3.1 million in investment, and I believe their long-term intentions are to take that to 180 or even 200 jobs. So very appreciative to have two in the first quarter. And we thank the governor and Congressman Westerman and Mike Preston, everyone that was involved that day. On a smaller scale, but still exciting, we've got a company we're working with from Texas that's looking at relocating to Hot Springs that we're having ongoing visits with. Switching the subject to ACTI, Congressman Westerman and our exec committee had a Zoom call with an interested party. We keep staying in touch with this particular party, among others. I don't know how to do this at a mic, but just so sad about Clay Farrar and his passing, and I think Eric Jackson said it best, Hot Springs has lost our best friend, but Clay's memorial service was on the 23rd, and former President Clinton among those attending, and certainly we will miss Clay more than I could express here. Jack Porter, Mike White, and I are pressing on, though, and we met last week, decided to, there's been a lot of work and a lot of wheel spinning, but we figured the next best thing, we really needed to get that phase 2, and we've asked for a cost analysis and requested from ADQ that we get that in process. And finally, on the ACTI front, Alex Mouton, who I think most of you know, has been a great source of information and just really a worker on our committee, and we've asked him to join us on the executive committee, not to take Clay's place. In some form or fashion, Jack or Mike White will be doing that as far as running lead on it, but Alec is a welcome addition to the group. Changing over to workforce, Michelle Ratcliffe has been working with Mary Hayes from Work Bay in Memphis, video shoot preparations, getting ready for a website that was actually launched yesterday, the Ready for Life website, and we did various shoots with Bill Allison at National Park College, Tony McCanley at Cobalt Aero Services, Vince Signorelli at Tanner's Team Sports, and Eric Gilson, the new HR director at Oaklawn. Michelle, Cole, and I have continuing meetings with Bill Allison, who is the VP of Workforce, the new VP of Workforce at the college. He's got all kinds of advances going with, and I know Director Trusty can weigh in here with Marine Tech, Industrial Tech, and something that we've specifically requested for some time is welding for our high school students, because so many of our manufacturers need welding, and they need the numbers. So next step is tackle the high schools and market it there. Dr. Hogan, John Hogan from the college, is our chair of the partnership, as you know. He was on the radio with Neil Gladner on Friday. Michelle was on there yesterday, and we're keeping workforce and workforce ed in the forefront, just trying to keep that in top of mind with everyone, much like broadband a couple years ago, but this isn't a battle we can win in a couple years. This will be ongoing, and we're prepared for the long haul there. Just on general entries, was honored to give the Welcome to Leadership Arkansas. It's always fun to have those folks from all over the state come to town. Eric Jackson spoke about tourism and Hot Springs history. Corey Alderdice about ASMSA. Jack, Mike, and myself about ACTI, and Cole about downtown development presenting to the group. Brag on your city manager. Bill Burrow did a fantastic job of presenting the state of the city to National Park Rotary Club a few weeks ago. Michelle, Cole, and I met with Ritter Communications for an update, and I'm proud to tell you that the work that had been done at the 227-270 junction, or for those of us that grew up here, the Mountain Pine Junction, is progressed to a point that they can complete their infrastructure and get broadband out to the college, to the museum, and to the industrial park. So very excited to see that progress. Cole, Michelle, and I had a meeting with City Manager Burr and City Attorney Albright to discuss recent innovations in broadband, because there's been a lot moving on that front lately. I went to the state capitol a couple weeks ago to support City Manager Burrow, County Judge Mahoney, and Senator Sample on the DF&A turnback money bill that I think was successful. Bill did a great job of testifying that day. We also had support from Malvern and Harrison in that measure. And finally, I spoke to you in pretty good detail last month about the MSA realignment issue, and although we don't have final numbers yet, I did a check Sunday night. There were 872 responses to that, and I didn't go and read every one, but I would suppose that 99 to 100% were all against the measure. So we're just waiting for a formal announcement, but I just want to applaud everyone, the city, the county, the planning district, the chamber, and the Metro partnership, and not just ours. From 144 MSAs from all across the country came together, because this would have been very detrimental for our city and our community as a whole. So that will conclude my report, other than to say right around the corner, Arkansas Derby is this Saturday. Our Academic Excellence Banquet, where we honor the top 5% graduating seniors, is the 29th of this month. And very proud to tell you that the Chamber Annual Banquet and Community Award Ceremony is scheduled for May 6th, the first new event in Oaklawn Event Center. So that's right around the corner. Board, that concludes my report. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, any questions of Mr. Trotman? Director Garcia?
Not a question. I just wanted to thank you for these more frequent updates and all the good news, and to thank Rita and the ambassadors for the great job they did for down at our center at Forest Lakes last week, for reopening and ribbon cutting, and all the ambassadors do a great job, and including Ambassador Trusty. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and my apologies. I was supposed to attend, and we had an ACTI meeting run late. But I do want to finish by saying our activity is really up. I don't want to put more pressure on us, but you can tell we're kind of over the hump with COVID. There's been a lot of activity, a lot of excitement, and you can kind of feel that people have been pent up for the past year, and things are ready to get back into motion. So,
Thank you.
thank you all. Appreciate you.
Thank you. This time we'll hear from Mr. Bill Burrow for the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As Mr. Troutman stated, the legislative session has been in full swing. It looks like that's going to conclude here in the next couple of 3 weeks, and hopefully we're going to get out without too much scathing. But we've had several bills that we've had to address. City Attorney Albright and myself have been very much so involved in several of those bills that go before them. But we're glad to see the session starting to wind down. It does take a lot of additional time away from some of the things that we would be doing here locally, but we appreciate the work that our delegation's doing over there, and appreciate Mr. Troutman coming over and helping with a couple of those bills that we've asked their help on. If you've been around Hot Springs in the past few weeks, you obviously know it's been spring break. It's phenomenal, the number of people that we've had in our city and in our downtown. I don't know if that's a sign that people are just ready to get back out, but I will say that it's been a very nice, I won't say a surprise, but a nice accommodations to have those folks here. Saturday, we had a little over 500 people stop at our visitor center there in Hill Wheatley, and the day before on a Friday, I think we had somewhere around 495, somewhere in that neighborhood. But if you've gone downtown over the past few weeks, it's just phenomenal to see the number of people that are on both sides of the sidewalk, and the traffic between here and the lakes. I mean, it spanned throughout our entire city. So we're very appreciative of a great spring break, and glad to see people still are coming to our city here in Hot Springs. Talk a little bit about the vaccines. We're offering free bus rides to anyone that needs a ride to be able to get a vaccine at one of the participating pharmacies. Many of the pharmacies are providing vaccines at this time, so if you've got a scheduled appointment, make that schedule. Let our drivers know that you're on your way to get a free vaccine at one of the pharmacies, and you'll be able to ride for free, and of course be able to ride back as well. We want to make sure that we're very accommodating to anyone that wants to get a vaccine and may not have the ability to get there. So we want to help out in that realm. Michelle Sestilli was just up here. They have done a phenomenal job in our CDBG program. I had mentioned the food insecurities that we have done over the past month, but now we finally have the rent utility assistance that's out and available. Hot Springs residents who have experienced financial hardship related to COVID-19 and are behind on rent or utility payments can now apply for assistance through the CDBG CARES Act funded emergency rent and utility subsistence program, and that's being managed by the Watchdog Behavioral Health and Wellness. So that first round of the CDBG COVID dollars that we received, we've partnered with Watchdog Behavioral Health to get that out into our assistance program. So eligible applicants must live in the city limits, have proof of a COVID-related hardship, such as a layoff or reduced work hours, and meet the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's low to moderate income. And there's really no other requirements that they really need to meet. For those that need more information, I'm going to throw a number out there, but it's 501-762-9038. And you can also call here at City Hall if you need additional information at 321-6811. David F. Watkins Memorial Park was dedicated this past week, Thursday, March the 25th. We actually had a break in the rain. It rained pretty hard that morning and that afternoon, but in that little time frame that we had, it gave us a break in the rain, and we were able to open the new David F. Watkins Memorial Park. David's widow Kay was here, as well as his two daughters, Leslie and Laura. David had a short time in leading the city, but his impact was great and continues today with a lot of the projects that we see that we continue to work on. Really appreciative of the Park Avenue Community Association that chose to name that park after David, and I think it's a fitting tribute. That was a particular neighborhood that David cared a lot about and envisioned a lot of change, and I think we're seeing that change happen. If you missed the ceremony, you can see some of the highlighted video on our the City of Hot Springs YouTube channel. Talked a little bit about the number of people that were here for spring break. Obviously, they were here in January as well. Our January sales tax revenue was up right at 11% over January 2020. It was 10.95% increase. What's intriguing about that number is that's a comparison to a January prior to COVID-19. So, last January was a big number for us in 2020, and this one eclipsed that again by almost 11%. Last thing I got is want to say how much I appreciate our planning department or our solid waste department on their Operation Clean Sweep. That's where we take 3 weeks in a particular area, and our neighborhood services will go out in that first week and they'll hand out bags of information, basically also notifications. If there's something there that is not up to code from a neighborhood standard, they will give them a list of those items, give them a couple of weeks to get those corrected. Usually it's things that you can see from the street. It's either grass that may be too high or a lot of debris, a lot of trash that may be in their yards, and we see that in some areas. But we want to make sure that we give them an avenue to be able to correct those issues. And so the second week is when solid waste comes in, and residents within that given area are able to place pretty much anything that's non-hazardous at curbside, and we'll collect that every day for free to help with that spring clean or that clean sweep of that neighborhood. And then on that third week, neighborhood services will go back through, and if there's anything that's still left that needs to be addressed, they will do that. This particular clean sweep happened between March 8th and 26th. It included about 350 structures in the area of Valley Street and Shady Grove Road between West Grand and Hollywood Avenues. Solid Waste made 116 stops that week and picked up just a little over 34 tons of debris. So those are the things that help keep our neighborhoods clean and attractive. And so we want to continue to offer that, and just to really appreciate, that's a lot of additional work for both of those departments, and really appreciate their efforts and what they're doing for our citizens. And Mayor, that concludes my report.
Very good. Thank you. This time we'll hear from individual directors on announcements regarding upcoming events. Director Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would like to invite you to an event on April 21st. Mark it on your calendar for a public event and reception to honor our police chief at 4:30 p.m. at the center at Forest Lakes, 305 Forest Lakes Boulevard. And the speaker is our police chief, Chief Chapman, and he'll be having some updates with stats and some tips for things going on through the summer months. But the reception will have good refreshments and food for you. So mark that on your calendar and look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other announcements of upcoming events?
Mine's not till September. You want me to wait?
Well, you go ahead. Give us a save the date announcement.
Okay, save the date for September at 501 Prime. The Gateway Street Association will be having something, Mayor. Remember that. Thank you.
Save the date. What was the date again?
September.
That's a month. The whole month celebration.
I don't know the date.
All right. Any other announcements of upcoming events? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and begin. We have one item under old business, and we're going to consider ordinance 021-20. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So move.
Second.
Director Trustee made the motion, and
Second.
Director Dobb Smith made the second. And
Mayor, this is ordinance 021-20, an ordinance amending the zoning map to plan development for Silver Key and roadside plan development generally located at 258 Five Points Road to allow short-term residential rental and usual and customary accessory uses, changing the future land use plan map to residential medium-high and for other purposes. That concludes your third and final reading. If you would now entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion.
let me go back. I got ahead of myself. I didn't ask for a motion to approve we had a motion and a second of the rules to read by title only. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And then we had, Brian just gave the introduction by title only. So we need to have a motion to adopt.
I so move.
Director Jones, seconded
Second.
by Director Trustee. And our staff report will be provided by Ms. Kathy Selman, Director of Planning and Development.
Thank you, Mayor. Our applicant is Aaron Burrows, P.E., with Atoka Incorporated, representing property owner Joseph France. And he is seeking plan development, PD zoning, and site plan approval to construct a large-scale, short-term rental project on the subject property to be known as Silver Key and Roadside Plan Development. The property consists of approximately 21 acres, and the land is currently zoned RL, Lake Area Residential Zoning District. The property has a future land use map designation of residential low and is located in Board of Directors District Number 5. I want to talk a little bit about the existing zoning. The RL Lake Residential Zoning has a variety of uses that can be permitted, either outright permitted or conditional, requiring Planning Commission approval. The typical permitted uses in this district are single-family residences and customary accessory use or structures. Conditional uses, and this is in the existing RL zone, are apartment buildings, duplexes, commercial boat docks, clubs, lodges, daycare centers, churches, charitable institutions, fish hatcheries, home occupations, hotels, motels and resorts, parks, and accessory uses deemed to be in character with the zone. The minimum single-family lot size in the RL zone is 10,000 square feet. The subject land is slightly more than 20 acres, and allowing 5 acres for roads and so forth, which would be about 25% of the property. A reasonable number of 10,000 square foot lots on 20 acres might be somewhere between 60 and 80. Should the PD zone district and site plan not be approved, the Lake Area Residential subdivision of the project, of the subject land, can proceed without board approval. The subject property currently contains 2 single-family residences with a total, again, approximately 21 acres. There are 4 unplatted parcels of land. It's along Lake Hamilton with quite a bit of lake frontage. Subject property has a significant slope of 94 feet in and to 400 feet on the west side for a slope of approximately 22%. The proposed development under the plan development request would consist of single-family residences and cabins. Short-term residential is the proposed use. 6 new residences or cabins, as well as the 2 existing homes, show access from 5 Points Road. 18 new residences show access from the proposed private Road A, and access to the new Road A is from existing Aberina Street and the existing 5 Points Road. This would be a gated development. There will be gates at the new roads, and no maintenance will be done by the city of Hot Springs on those private roads. The code requires that certain elements be examined in considering a plan development request. This narrative describes a unique design for a large-scale site with single-family residences for short-term rental use. This concept is not possible through standard zoning regulations, which do not recognize short-term rental as a specific use. This proposed development suggests a public benefit to our city, as visitors establish economic benefit for the city of Hot Springs, and high-quality projects contribute to the overall image of our city and its infrastructure. The proposed short-term rental development is similar to existing surrounding land uses. Within proximity of the subject property is a short-term rental or resort property known as 5 Points Resort, approximately to the southeast, and there are 12 cabins there. A multi-unit development, Buena Vista Resort, is to the west, and there's approximately 59 units at that development. There are multifamily and single-family residences to the north and some to the southeast. In Hot Springs Lodge and Resort, a short-term vacation rental plan development is to the east, and that development was approved for 42 sleeping rooms in 6 separate wings. Each wing would also have a kitchen and common space. At this time, there is no specific site development plan proposed other than the 2 residential areas. The proposed future land use plan map designation for the subject property is residential low. The proposed development could be compatible with that. It could also be compatible with a designation of residential medium high, and that is a part of the application to change that designation. The City of Hot Springs 2030 Comprehensive Plan Goal number 6 is to maintain the safety, vitality, and attractiveness of Hot Springs neighborhoods. And the applicant has proposed a project that should do exactly that. The design of the development plan is intended to mitigate impacts on public health, welfare, or safety in several ways. It is, as I said, gated. There is an east-west connective road, which is intended to be used for construction. And while homes would not be addressed from this road, it would provide a needed connection should there be an emergency situation either on Aberina adjacent or on 5 Points. And the applicant has mentioned that should such a situation arise, he would make that road available to residents in that area for their use. The project includes new fire hydrants and turnarounds for emergency vehicles and fire truck accessibility. And the proposed development is designed to support property values in the neighborhood. Planning Commission heard this item after advertising the meeting on February 11, 2021. At that time, they called for testimony. Public comments included questions about loss of lake views by neighbors. Planning Commission accepted the staff report findings and recommendations and voted to recommend that the Board of Directors adopt an ordinance establishing residential, short-term rental residential, and usual and customary accessory uses on the subject acres on this Silver Key and roadside plan development site plan with 7 specific conditions. Planning Commission found that the requirements for this change were met, and the conditions are, there are 7, and they include standard conditions that all construction and construction activity must follow the codes and standards as are now or may hereafter be required or enacted by the city, the state, or the federal government. There shall be construction that is in strict accordance with the approved PD zone district, including but not limited to land use, street construction, driveways, sidewalks, green and open spaces, parking, landscaping, and utilities. Permits will need to be obtained. Common elements, including the streets, shall be privately owned and maintained by the property owners and will not be a liability to the city of Hot Springs. And should further land divisions be desired, a preliminary subdivision and final subdivision application with Planning Commission consideration and approval would be required. And all exterior light sources shall be fully downcast and fully shielded to prevent glare into the eyes of drivers, pedestrians, or surrounding areas. The thing I think I did not emphasize is that with a plan development, we have the list of uses, which in this case is quite short. Residential, short-term rental, residential, and the uses that go along with that. The applicant has voluntarily chosen to forego the other uses that are a possibility with the RL Lake Area Residential Zone District. There is a detailed site plan that goes along with this, and that is the only way that this project can be developed. They must adhere to that site plan should you approve this zoning. Thank you very much, and that concludes the presentation.
Any questions of Director Selman?
Mayor,
Director Garcia?
I have some questions, but I know that there's people here to speak, so I'd rather wait if you're going to be here to
Absolutely.
ask later. Is that okay?
Any other directors with a question for Director Selman at this time?
The Planning Commission recommended approval, 7-0, because it was consistent with the requirements of the code with the 7 conditions. Thank you.
I just have a real quick question, and it has to do with one of the conditions, just to clarify. So if there's future development or subdivision or anything outside of the site plan, it goes through the whole process through the Planning Commission again, correct?
If there is a request to subdivide, it goes to Planning Commission, yes, absolutely. If there is a request in some way to amend this, which is not on the table, that would require a recommendation from Planning Commission after a hearing, as well as approval by the Board of Directors.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
The planned development is more restrictive or less restrictive than RL?
It is more restrictive in this case.
Can anybody just go about and ask for a planned development? Are there certain?
There are standards that are in the code, and I would be happy to go through those if you'd like me to do that.
Well, when I was reading your packet, it indicated that a planned development would not be must meet a threshold criteria. And there were
Yes,
about
at least one.
5 of them that were listed. Do you recall what those are?
Yes, in this project, there are 2 that work with the application. One is that it would allow the development of an infill parcel in the developed portion of the city that could not be made productive under normal zoning regulations. This is a project that, although having extensive lake frontage, is within a half mile of Walmart. There is a lot of development around it, and there is a great diversity of development around this land. The other standard is that the parcel requires flexibility in order to allow high-quality or innovative urban design. And in this case, the applicant is proposing clustered housing with open space buffers. So that is something that you don't see in a standard zone district.
Yeah, I also noticed that, we have a threshold criteria that deals with, and perhaps it doesn't apply here and doesn't need to apply, I don't know, but it's talked about 30% of the total development being reserved as permanent open space. And I think 8.5 acres of the 21 acres is not being touched, so that's roughly 39%.
That would be right.
So I think there may be, if not 2, perhaps 3 of the 5 threshold criteria are being
Yes.
met there. Okay, Director Garcia, did you have a hand raised?
Well, you were asking some of the questions I was going to ask, and I just had a clarification on that.
Go ahead.
Oh, the 30%, I did not see where it said it was 30%. It said of the total area of 1 acres, but how much, that's not what's being developed. I mean, the slope and where the road is coming in from the street is just the road coming in. But in the cluster of buildings where it's actually being developed, I could not determine that 30% was there.
Well, and the applicant is not coming in under that standard either. And often with a planned development, that 30% is dedicated to the public, and that is not the case with this proposal.
But how does the allow development of an infill parcel under the current zoning? It can have development.
It can have development. It cannot be designated short-term rental.
And you said earlier we don't have anything on short-term rental in our code.
We don't, and that is why the applicant has chosen to request that use under planned development.
But this says that could not be made productive under normal zoning regulations. Did the Planning Commission note that this was the reason they were using for PD?
I don't recall that they articulated that.
Because that was one of my questions. I could not see where they said which criteria they used in their decision-making, and I do not see where that applies because it says PD needs to be used because this could not be made productive. So how does that criteria go with PD for this property?
Well, a little bit about planning and a little bit about subdivision. At the zoning request level, there's a great deal of art as well as science that goes into the analysis. At the subdivision level, if the requirements are checked off, then there is really no alternative but to approve a subdivision.
Well, if we
This is zoning.
for zoning, but that's what controls everything. Zoning is very important because a lot of residents in the city are in the city for zoning protection. And I could not find where the Planning Commission identified what criteria they used here. But it would be clearer if we did have in the code of what would be appropriate code for STRs, wouldn't it?
Probably would be very helpful.
And then the other one you mentioned, it involves a parcel in which flexibility would allow high quality or innovative urban design, which I have no doubt that this is high quality, but the current zoning would also allow this.
The current zoning has specific requirements as to lot size minimums that may be difficult to achieve given the existing topography of the land. We're looking at property where there are in places slopes that are around 22%, which is quite extreme. The PD zone district allows for some modification of those lot sizes to more carefully blend with the existing topography. Many times we see development where topography, which is beautiful, is completely erased. And this zone district allows for the maintenance of some of those existing topographic features.
But with even with lake property with appropriate lot size, it can be innovative designs for nice homes for residents.
Absolutely.
So this isn't unique. I mean, the current zone would allow this without having to change to a PD. And I would like the Planning Commission to identify what criteria they said what was in their decision making. Also, did they, I still don't know on the cluster area where the development is, what the portion for green space and buffer is. Did they use and look at, I really appreciate that you put the maps in from the comprehensive plan. And the map from the applicant lays right in these environmental preservation and the lake and amenity communities. So how did the Planning Commission use the comprehensive plan in their decision making in approving this zoning change?
This is in the lake area and amenity area, and the proposal is for housing which would support either permanent residences or recreational lake use.
It was, even in your comments, said for low impact. And in the information in the comprehensive plan, is that what the Planning Commission said? Did they use the comprehensive plan in their decision making?
We use the comprehensive plan in making decisions regarding zoning, yes.
Well, I know that in the staff, I just want to make sure that, because I didn't see where they identified that how the environment in this area was going to be protective, since it says that we should focus on considering low impact developments and to protect our streams and our lake shore areas. I would like the Planning Commission to identify that to us as well. How this impacted. Did they look at this and say it meets this criteria without any danger? I could not find an environmental impact statement. Was there any environmental study or any review for environmental impact?
That would be a first. That is not required by Hot Springs.
But in these two in the area in our plan, comprehensive plan, it identifies the need to protect the environment and to protect these areas. So with environmental buffers along waterways and the trails along environmental buffers, minimize the site disturbance associated with the lot grading. So how can I make a decision when we adopted this and said this is our playbook for making decisions? How I'd like the Planning Commission to identify how it does not disturb this land that's been identified for us to protect in our vision for the type of development in this natural environment.
I hope that this doesn't come across as argumentative. This development does not focus modification to the land along the lakefront. It is significantly back from the lakefront. And the PD designation is intended to allow those existing contours to be as little disturbed as possible.
I understand the intent, and I don't take any offense to your comments at all. I'm just trying to understand. To me, making zoning changes is very important. In our residents, in our residential neighborhoods depend on zoning. So when I make a vote on a zoning change, I want to make sure I understand, and I think everybody on the board wants to understand everything as well. And I'm trying to understand how this even fits in residential, without a conditional use as well, because to me it's commercial, and I don't see that is residential. And the majority of what you described in the surrounding area came in through annexation, so they were grandfathered in. This type here of request is the first of my knowledge of this density in building of what we've really had to look at. And we have not had any big, it's just started in the past year with construction projects of this nature. So I want to make sure I understand everything. And was there any backup, or to my understanding, Entergy did not approve a request for boat ramps and boat docks. So how would the boats that visitors would be bringing in, where will they be parked? I didn't see that on that map.
I'm glad you mentioned that. This project only is subject to board approval on the land. Any boat docks that are shown on the lake are illustrative only and have absolutely nothing to do with the PD site plan as you would be considering it.
But so there's no, in the plan, there's no boat parking space included?
I think that's a question for the applicant.
Okay. And what were the number of beds? Last month I asked what was the potential sleeping beds, the number of people that would be in each unit?
That is also a question for the applicant.
Okay. Because I was having trouble coming up with the number of car trips that were listed in the application. I had a much higher estimate. But to make sure that there was some more answers I would like to have from the Planning Commission to make sure everything is clear and that everything, because I know a lot of building and construction projects do require an environmental impact statement or study.
Anybody else have questions of Director Selman? Thank you.
Thank you.
This time, we'll hear from a number of individuals who have signed up to speak on this item. I want to remind all those who are that come up to the podium, please restate your name, your address, and what district you reside in. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If your comments have been appropriately communicated by a previous speaker, please rise and indicate such, and that way we'll be able to move through the process. But you're all more than welcome to come to the podium and provide us your input within that 3-minute time frame. So at this time, for those speaking for the project, I'll call on Mr. Aaron Burrow, professional engineer.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Aaron Burrows. I live at 110 Hunter Cove Court. I'm the professional engineer and represent the owners and applicants. We support the city's efforts to regulate short-term rental. We think there should be regulations regarding occupancy and parking, and it is a good idea to have someone on call that can be available within an hour to meet at the site if there are any nuisance complaints regarding trash or noise, or if they need to meet with emergency personnel from fire and police department. We do not support regulations that would limit by some number the number of STRs that can be in an area. The number is mentioned of 12. Who knows what that number should be, but I don't think we should have a number to limit the number in an area. Also, a number was thrown out of 50 feet between, this was in the paper, this is my source on this, 50 feet between rentals. And again, that ambiguous number doesn't really help, and it also would prohibit this kind of development that we're suggesting, which is an ideal development for short-term rentals, to cluster them together in a community and not have grandmother in the middle with short-term rentals on either side of her. We've got a community with all the short-term rentals together where everybody understands the rules. This location is a perfect location for short-term rentals, for a community of short-term rentals. We've got 20 acres with 3,000 feet of lake frontage. There's not a lot of properties like this, and it's close to downtown Hot Springs. There are PDs surrounding, as Ms. Selman said earlier. There's planned developments all around this community. Planned development to the west, Buena Vista, which she mentioned. There's multifamily apartments and duplexes to the north. And then there's about 60 acre of multifamily units and not multifamily, but short-term rentals and cabins to the east. And also, I would argue that the immediate 5 or 6 lots to our east do not meet the code of residential lake. To be a residential lake, they have to be 100 foot wide. They don't meet code. It shouldn't be zoned residential lake. It should be zoned PD as well. And the lots to the left that are built, those don't meet the 10,000 square foot. So there are no areas in immediate proximity that meet RL code. They should all be PDs like ours. There are topographical separation between our property and the neighbors. There is a ravine and a lake and a creek to the west, which will separate from our property to the west. There's a mountainside slope, hillside to the north, which would separate topographically from property owners there. And there is a ravine and a bay to the east and the lake to the south. So we are properly insulated from all adjacent properties. We've heard complaints from individuals from Lighthouse Cove, specifically about the traffic in our development. First of all, I have to just cry hypocrisy on that one. Lighthouse Cove, if you're familiar with that, there are 32 homes crammed on 5 acres of land. That's 6 houses per acre in Lighthouse Cove. If we did that on this development, we'd be putting 120 houses on this development. We're proposing 24. Also, regarding the 4 residential lots to the east, I'll try and wrap this up. I had 6 pages and I've got it down to 2. The 5 Points Road, this development is the best scenario for those neighbors as well. Again, we're only talking about putting 6 houses onto 5 Point Road. we could put, as Director Selman said, we could put 60 and 80 to 80 houses. We're only talking about putting 6 houses onto 5 Point Road, and the other one we'll build an old road and take those traffic to Aberena. This property is not, Director Garcia, it is not a green space, it's not a national park, and the things you're suggesting would be very prohibitive to development of any kind for any project. And we don't want to be prohibitive to development in Hot Springs, I don't believe. Specifically looking at these 6 lots to the east, not one of them meets the RL code. The one immediately adjacent to us has a mobile home on it. The one on the far side is owned by a corporation, not an individual, and the 4 in the middle don't meet RL code. They're 65 to 80 foot wide. They don't meet RL code.
Aaron, can you provide a closing comment?
Yeah, in conclusion, this is a great development for the city, and 100% of the staff has approved this. We've met all requirements of the staff and of the Planning Commission. It's been 100% approved, and we ask that you vote along with the Planning Commission and the staff and approve this development. Good fences make good neighbors, and we've got fences all around this property to keep it isolated from the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and I had some handouts, if I may be allowed to hand those out
Provide them
to support the statements that I've said, that I've made. We have some handouts here. We've met all the requirements of the Planning Commission and the staff.
That's fine. Just provide them to the
Okay.
City Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, may we ask?
Yes, yeah, we have opportunities to ask questions, so any director
And
have a
again, it may help
question
if
of-
looking at the drawings. We've met all the requirements of the city staff. It seems like the board is now asking questions beyond what is in code for approval of this project now.
Director Garcia, did you have a question?
Yes, and you're right, there are questions, because as the planning director mentioned, we don't have STR in the code. So that creates clouds for decision makers, and I hope that you understand that. Did you understand that the reference to the properties that you were saying that did not meet RL code were annexed in, and our planning department viewed all the properties that were recently annexed, and they recommended the RL code to us to accept those codes for that property. It was not something that was built in city code. And when properties come in like that, you understand that those are grandfathered in.
Yeah, my father's property was annexed too at that same time.
Yeah, I mean, all of this property was.
Right.
So the planning director said I should ask you what the planned sleeping beds or number of people that each of these, what would be the total that could be housed there overnight? Do you have a plan?
Well, yeah, approximately. I mean, we're talking about 24 homes. If you made 4-bedroom homes, we're talking about 100 beds. If you did 24, 4 and 24, 4 beds and 24 units. These are lake subdivision lots. They can be sold as lake lots. People can buy these lots and move into them, and it can be their home, and they don't have to rent it out. We're just communicating that in this subdivision, there will be short-term rentals, and people are aware in the bill of assurance and in the planned development, which we cannot deviate without coming back to this board or to the Planning Commission for approval. We can't deviate from that. There won't be any extra. What you see on the paper is what you will get. And they won't all be short-term rentals, but we're protecting the opportunity for people to do short-term rentals, which makes it economically feasible to develop this land. It's very steep. It's going to be expensive to develop. The city has required a 6-inch water main extension, which will improve water fire flow prevention on both Aberena and 5 Points. Right now, they're dead-end water lines. We're going to connect the two. That's going to protect everybody on Buena Vista and on 5 Points Road. Will have better fire protection. They'll have better roads. Right now, they're like 14-foot wide chip and seal roads on 5 Points that are falling apart, and we don't want to use them. Nobody wants to use them. That's why we're taking our traffic to Aberena, because 5 Point Road is in bad shape. But if there's development, if there's tax money, then the city can afford to improve those roads. If there's more people living there, if there's only 5 people living on the road, they may not develop it, but if we have more people living on the road, they can afford to improve the roads for everybody.
Yes, sir. You mentioned that this could be 60 to 80 homes built there. Now, if you're just talking about the number of acres, I understand that, but I've been out there several times. I do not see with the slope of that property how you could possibly build
Oh,
that
no.
many homes.
Right, no, we don't intend, we're only, we're
But
good.
so in reality, you really couldn't
No,
get
no.
approved to build that many
No, ma'am.
homes.
No, if you look on the plan, we have areas where the creek is and south of the creek. We're not going to touch that. It's going to stay woods. It's going to be environmentally protected. We're developing about 14 of the 20 acres. There's about 6 acres that could be developed in the future. So basically, we're saying on the 14 acres of land, we're putting 24 homes.
So on that 14 acres where the plans of your cluster
We're planning on
are-
developing, putting roads and houses, yes, ma'am.
So is there any buffer or green space within that 14
Well,
acres?
I just
But it's
mentioned
not,
around it. There's a-
yeah, but
there's
it's
a-
not 30%, but that's not
Well,
the
that's not a
criteria you're
requirement. I
asking.
mean, yeah, if we did it as a residential lake, there is no requirement for 30% buffer. In fact, I'm not familiar with that.
For
I'd have-
PD, our question is about changing the zoning of the land.
Well, this land was undeveloped when it was annexed, and in fact, none of this land, it's on the lake, none of it meets RL code. None of it does.
But it was annexed in and grandfathered into that.
Yeah,
That's-
they assigned
that-
it, but we didn't take a microscope and look at it. But if you take a microscope and look at it now, they don't meet RL code. They're on the lake. They're residential houses on the lake, but they don't meet RL code.
But
They're
they
not-
wouldn't, didn't come before the city board then. If that was being proposed now, that doesn't mean it would
Right.
be built that way either, because it's in the city, the county did not have zoning, so it did not.
Well, they did.
Come
They did.
befo-
Lighthouse Cove was approved by the city. It was in the jurisdictional area. I believe it was.
But I'm talking about this type, the houses you were referring to on that street.
Right, yeah, the
But-
houses we're doing is very consistent with the exception of Lighthouse Cove that has 6 acres, 6 houses per acre. Our development's very consistent with all the property around it, and it can be used for residential homes. It's not, it is residential homes, and it is and there's buffers all around it. I mentioned the topographical and the roads and the lakes and the creeks. There's plenty of boundaries. This is a great development for the city. We're talking about, a project that, 24 houses at $250 a piece, $250,000 a piece. You're talking about $6 million to $10 million in investment in construction jobs. I like jobs. I know a lot of people that like jobs. We're talking about $6 to $10 million in jobs for construction, and looking roughly, we're talking about $300,000 a month in revenue for the city for rentals. And then those people, if they come stay there, probably spend another $300,000. We're talking $600,000 a month for the economy. And my wife has a clothing store, and we like people to come to town and spend money.
We are for development.
Oh, good.
But we're
I thought you were
also
against
for
it.
protecting our residents with our zoning
Yes, ma'am.
codes. This
Yeah, you gotta do both.
question
You gotta do both,
is
yeah.
about the,
So we're gonna sacrifice. So
Well,
if you're
let's
here,
stay on point here.
Yeah,
Do
I'm
we have any
talking-
other questions from other
I'm
directors?
talking about what criteria that was used to determine this should be PD. And I have
yeah,
trouble
right, yeah.
identifying which of the, what was your thoughts?
it
And
just sounds like you're looking hard for an argument to defeat it. I mean, I wish you were working as hard to look for an argument to approve development as you are to defeat development. But to answer your question, to answer your-
Point of order, I don't think that
Well, let's-
public criticism at the
Well, I'd like to answer-
microphone. And so I will not ask any more questions of the speaker.
Wow, okay.
Any other
Wow, okay.
directors have a question
All
of Mr. Burrow? No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Chris Post. Please come forward and state your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, directors. My name is Chris Post. I represent Silver Key Properties. I live at 7515 Highway 5, which is about 20 miles that way. So I just get on Highway 5 and run right into my house, big blue house on the south side of the road. Aaron kind of covered what I was going to talk a little bit about was the revenue that this particular project could potentially bring to Hot Springs. But when we were at the community forum, I know it's probably been, what was that, 2 weeks ago, there were some people that got up and made comments that led me to believe that they think that this is some outside investor coming in and, you know, just some big shot. It's just me. It's me and Joe, basically. Like I said, I live right down the road in Benton. So my property manager, somebody mentioned having a property manager on site. My property manager will live on site, so she'll be right there to address any issues that may come up. I own 2 VRBOs in Hot Springs now on Lakeshore Drive, and she has been my property manager for about 2 years. She's great, so she'll be right there on site with these houses. My analysis has 18 houses. I know we're planning on building more, so this is a little bit conservative, but at 18 houses, I'm planning on building 4 beds. 4 beds a house, so that's 72 total beds. Figure $100 per bed per night, so the nightly revenue would be $7,200. Obviously, I'm not going to rent the house every night. So in my analysis, I figured up half, so 182 days. That's yearly revenue of about $1.3 million, and at a 4.5% Airbnb or VRBO tax rate, that's about $60,000 in VRBO or vacation rental tax dollars to the Hot Springs each year. At $50, the tax per bed for 18 houses, that's $3,600 a year. I figured that each family that comes would likely probably spend $1,500 here in the city of Hot Springs between meals and going out and entertainment. And if they stay rented half the year, that is food, entertainment, dollars spent in Hot Springs of about $702,000. If you tax that at 3%, that's another $21,000 in tax revenue. Property taxes alone, I estimate, will be about $36,000 a year. So if you add all that up together, yearly total tax revenue is about $120,000. But as Aaron mentioned, to build these houses, it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to be probably close to $7 or $8 million that we're going to, invest here in the city of Hot Springs. So, got 10 seconds left. Like I said, my name is Chris Post, and I would really appreciate your approval. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Post from directors? Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Joseph Franz, please. Please restate your name and address.
Joseph France, 254 Five Points, Hot Springs. I recently moved here about 6 months ago when I purchased the property over on 5 Points. I've had short-term rentals here for about 4 years, and we love doing it. We love bringing people to Hot Springs, and found a niche, and that's what we do. And I'm in real estate development other places too, but I like Hot Springs. I've always loved Hot Springs. Got a chance to move here, and I did it, and so I'm here. And we came here knowing that Hot Springs was very receptive to people coming in and spending money and visiting Hot Springs. America's first resort is what it says in Wikipedia. Started renting places in the mid-1800s here, and it's no stranger to have rentals in Hot Springs. It's very common. What we're wanting to do is a very upscale development. We're spending a lot of money. Chris probably going to spend about $7 million. I'm probably half of that on the other side. And then at some point, we've got 6 acres left. We would like to do some long-term rental for 55 plus possibly, if we could get that past the board. And I left a green space in that whole property so people could enjoy that piece of property. Before, there was only several people lived on the property, and nobody, I want people to be able to enjoy the lake in Hot Springs, and that's what we're doing, what we're trying to do. Some people may mention that this is a de facto hotel. It's not. It's an alternative to people staying in a hotel. It's letting kids run outside in green spaces and go swimming, I've got the perfect property for kids to enjoy it, go swimming, relax, people to come to Hot Springs. And it couldn't set up any better, being that close to Walmart, the traffic coming off Aberina. Like Aaron said, if we don't get past, then we do a RL subdivision, and we could actually build more houses than we've intended to. We don't want to do that. We've got a plan, and we want to stick to the plan, and we're seeking your approval for that plan. So thank you for your time and looking at this and consideration. We appreciate it.
Any questions of Mr. Prince? Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes the list of speaking for. We'll move to those who would be opposed. Ms. Glenda Dunn, would you please come forward and restate your name, address, and what district you reside in?
Yes, my name is Glenda Dunn, and I proudly live in Lighthouse Cove on Buena Vista in District 5. Lighthouse Cove is owner-occupied dwellings, which is a difference in short-term rentals. According to the numbers that the individuals have given out, when I personally voted to be annexed into the city of Hot Springs, it was for protection. It was for protection from the board, for protection for this exact thing. But since I voted, and the city has been overseeing the property on Buena Vista, there has been anywhere from, according to their numbers, 132 to 166, if this is approved tonight, short-term rentals in my residential neighborhood. And I have a real problem with that. Because according to the property that Hot Springs, that they've referenced in there as to Hot Springs at 171 Wayward Winds, and is also being developed by Mr. France. He's developing both of these properties. That one's been under development for over a year. And according to their numbers, with what they're going to have at the 171 Wayward Winds and what they're going to have at this property, if you add that up, whether 18 homes or 24 homes on this property, it's either from 132 to 166 short-term rentals. And I don't know how you can get around that, whether the kids are playing outside or not. It's a quasi-hotel motel, because kids can play outside at motels and hotels just like they can short-term rentals. So I ask that you deny the request, or at least table it till after some regulations are set up to control these short-term rentals. Thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Dunn? Thank you. Ms. Cheryl Dennison, please come forward and restate your name and address and district, please.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Dennison, and I live at 130 San Carlos Cove, and I'm in District 5. And I do live in Lighthouse Cove. And yes, our homes are very close together. I chose to buy it because of that very fact, because it's a neighborhood. We have no short-term rentals. You cannot rent out your homes. The least amount you can rent it for is 6 months. Now then, you're talking about, I heard Mr. France say that if he couldn't develop it this way, he would make it regular residential. Those people will go to banks and get loans. They'll buy cars. They'll go to church. They'll be volunteers. They'll be in organizations. They'll send their kids to school. They'll go to college, and they'll come back home and settle in Hot Springs. Why make it a hotel in residential area when you can put a really nice residential project right there, just like Mr. France said he would do if he couldn't make it short-term rentals? So I urge you to think about, would you want this in your neighborhood? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stephanie Alderdice. Please come forward to restate your name and address.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Alderdice. I am a resident at 248 Arlington Park Drive here in Hot Springs, and I live in District 5. I wanted to first of all extend appreciation for the board allowing us to come up here and discuss this. For those of you who I don't know, I wanted to give a little bit of a background. Not only am I a resident here in Hot Springs, but I'm also a small business owner. I have an advertising and marketing agency here in downtown Hot Springs, and we are very fortunate to see the benefit, the economic impact that tourism has. And so I don't want to make it sound as if I am against business, because I thrive off of the tourism that we have in this town. In addition to working with many businesses that attract the tourists that come here and help with our economic development, I work with a lot of community organizations and a lot of other small business owners and homeowners, and that's how I was brought to my attention about this conversation happening right now. And so while there were many wonderful points brought up by Director Garcia tonight that I don't want to go into, she already brought them up in terms of the impact on the environment and the slope and whatnot. I wanted to speak to a bigger issue as to some of the concerns that I have the more I read and understand what's going on, that I would really like for you as directors to consider when you approach the vote tonight. There are three big areas that come up in my mind: that of scope, impact, and precedent. First of all, scope. I know right now short-term rentals are sort of this Wild West territory for Hot Springs. They're beneficial. I know there are a lot of individuals who are purchasing homes in areas and making investments in order to improve the property and bring folks in. That's wonderful. I know that you are in the midst of trying to find regulations and codes that benefit both business owners and the community. Right now, that's still up in the air, and the scope and size of this development is very significant. My urging on that is for us to, as it's been mentioned before, to take our time, take our breath, and make sure that whatever standards we adopt for short-term rentals is equitable. The other impact that I wanted to speak to is not only the environment impact and the slope that's going to be adapted, but also community. We hear the term houses and residences described a lot. It seems to be bouncing back and forth as to whether or not this is going to be a community of short-term rentals. Some people can buy houses, some of them can be rentals. Right now, what this is sort of weaving in between in this, like I said, a Wild West. We really aren't sure what we're doing with short-term rentals, and so we don't have as clear of a vision of what this will look like until we know and have a better idea in terms of what's going on, because communities and homes, when we talk about a residential neighborhood, we're talking about everybody with skin in the game. And finally, the last point I want to make is that of precedent. Right now, when it comes to changing a zone for a project like this that doesn't seem to fit any which way, I know there will be other developments and other businesses in the future that are going to look to your decision tonight to influence how they move in the future. Until we have a better understanding of how we want to approach short-term rentals throughout the city, I urge you to table this and reconsider whether or not to change the zone. Thank you again.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mr. Ken Mcrae. Please come forward and restate your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Ken Mcrae, and I live in Little Rock, but we own the house at 205 Five Points Road. All the reason that we are here, we found out about as neighbors about this proposal and this project. This PD project was actually passed by the Planning Commission, and it was scheduled for a vote by the city board. That's the first time most of us heard about it, for whatever reason. And so we have tried to bring to the board our concern about this project. It's very clear that the 5 Points neighborhood, which was established in 1938 and did not come into this city until 2 years ago, and it came in as RL, residential leisure zoning, to be protected from intrusive commercial activities. What we've heard tonight is that this property will be 100 beds or more. It will be short-term rental. It will have pavilions, and it will have usual and customary accessory buildings as outlined in your agenda. So we don't know what it is, but we know it's not a single-family home. It looks and seems to be a hotel-oriented, full-time commercial venture. So we would ask that you not support this request for rezoning for that reason. And then A second reason we would ask that you not support this request at this time is that the city of Hot Springs is undertaking to look at what is a STR, and it's a complicated question. But to vote on it tonight and approve this ordinance in front of you without having any STR regulations would mean that the largest short-term rental in Hot Springs would not have any regulatory control. So thank you. We would appreciate your vote, and thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Mcrae? Thank you. Mr. Burt Newell, please come forward and restate your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, I'm Burt Newell. I live on in Far Shores, which is not in the city. My office, 38 years, is in District 2 on 211 Hobson Street. I'm here tonight representing 8 families in the 5 Points neighborhood in District 5. We believe that the Planning Commission failed to properly analyze the factors which they should do under the zoning code. And we believe if you, as the board, pass the ordinance based on the Planning Commission analysis, that your decision could be considered by a reviewing court as arbitrary, capricious, or lacking a rational basis. Here's why. As Ms. Selman pointed out earlier, there's really 2 tiers to the plan development section of the zoning code. In the first tier, there are 5 criteria. These are in the disjunctive. If any one of them fits, then the commission can go forward to the second round, what I call the second round. In the second round, there are 6 criteria, but these all must be met. I don't have time to go through all of them. I want to talk about a few of them. One requirement is that the plan development must provide public benefits that would not be achievable through the normal zoning regulations. But here in Hot Springs, as you've heard and as you know, we are replete with short-term rental options from hotels, motels, cabins, homes, and historic districts and lake homes as well. We have no proof that we as a city need more, and we do not have an accurate account of what we have in place. If there's no established need, if there's no established shortage, there can be no finding of public benefit. So this plan provides no public benefit which doesn't already exist. There's the traffic issue. When this case came before the Planning Commission, they did mention traffic counts, but the staff found that the estimates made by the developers were off by 100%, so they doubled the amount of traffic. So there's still traffic issues out there in the area. One of the most important categories that must be met is that the plan development must be compatible with Hot Springs' future land use. As Ms. Zelman told you, the current future land use plan for this subject property is residential low. So what you're going to have to do if you want to, in passing the ordinance, as you know, it's got 2 parts. The first part is you're going to change your comprehensive plan. You got to change the plan and then change the zoning. So this plan will not fit in the PD unless you change the comprehensive plan. Another requirement is that the project not endanger health, welfare, safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values. In the Planning Commission, there was no discussion, there was no citation of any assessments of property values. And also, as you've seen, this project is very high density with copious grading of the lots. So this development is clearly not compatible with the comprehensive plan from an environmental standpoint. Just could I continue, Mayor?
Yes.
Very briefly.
Go ahead.
The final criteria is that the development must be of a character and contain such uses as are needed in the area of the project. Well, as you've been told by Ms. Dunn and others, in the area, there simply is no need in this area where the development is for short-term rentals. This development will serve the tourists, of course, not the neighbors. And even with the conditions that the Planning Commission recommends, the zoning change has not been adequately vetted. This came before the Planning Commission on February 11th, and I've read the minutes, and they're quite brief. I can tell you that that all that was discussed was traffic and sewer. None of the traffic is one of the 6 mandatory criteria, but of those 6 criteria, there's 5 that were not touched upon at all. So these 6 criteria that must be considered before you can change the zoning code have simply not been discussed. And because of that, I think a decision based on the current record could be argued that there's no rational basis for your decision because there's simply not been any public discussion that you've heard from the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Newell? Thank you. Alicia Gold and family. Alicia, please come forward and restate your name and address, please, and what district you reside in.
It's Ashley Gold.
I'm sorry.
My family home is at 217 Five Points Road. And I understand about tourism. I grew up, my father owned a souvenir store, so I want tourists to come to Hot Springs for sure. But today, the current Silver Key project is a commercial project disguised as a residential development. In this situation, the terms houses, cabins, residences are being used interchangeably, so please make no mistake, as we've mentioned before, that this project is being proposed as a product that resembles a neighborhood with houses, garages, driveways, but it will function as a large-scale motor court for transient guests. Residential neighborhoods are home to residents of the city. Close neighborhoods build community and culture, preserve our environment, drive safely, respect our surroundings, look toward the long-term future of the area. These same expectations don't exist for transient guests. Approving the requested zoning change for the land use of the Silver Key project would be in direct contradiction of the Hot Springs Comprehensive Plan. We ask that you use the plan that you, directors, community leaders, and consultants developed to serve as a guide for all new developments and vote against the current proposal. Send Silver Key back to the Planning Commission, request amendments that bring the project more in line with the established criteria of the RL zoning. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Campbell and Graham Matella. Welcome, and please restate your name and your address, please.
I'm Campbell Manzella, and I also live at 217 Five Points Road. I'd like to refer you to pages 100 to 101 of Forward Hot Springs 2040 Comprehensive Plan, which maps out the location of the Environmental Preservation Corridor. Quote, settlements in Environmental Preservation Corridor should respond to the natural environment and utilize low-impact development techniques, cluster developments, conservations, easements, and very low-density development types, end quote. Planning and performance criteria includes minimizing land disturbance through compact development patterns, considering low-impact development techniques, protecting native soil, and minimizing site disturbance associated with overlot grading. The Silver Key project falls within the Environmental Preservation Corridor. However, no environmental impact study has been provided. This should be a critical step before any zoning change approval. The vicinity analysis provided to the city indicates that the subject property has a significant side slope of 94 feet and 410 feet on the west side for a slope of 22%. The topography of the property includes multiple ridges, valleys, and a creek through the western portion of the property. The application materials included photos of a shed and trailer, but none reflecting the gully and ravine where 2 cabins are planned to be built and may cause issues with stormwater runoff and drainage. Is there reliable evidence that the project, as stated, can be accomplished while both meeting the EPC criteria and minimizing harmful environmental impacts? Further, the Hot Springs Excavation Code and Grading Code, Section 1593, states, quote, "No person shall do any excavation or grading without having obtained a permit from the city engineer." Excavation and grading have occurred on the site for the Silver Key project without city approval. This not only disturbs the current environment, but stands in direct violation of city regulations. We humbly urge the board to remain consistent with the stated intent of preserving the environment and carefully weighing the long-term impact of any new construction. We ask you to reject the application for zoning change and the current Silver Key plans.
Very good. Any questions of the speaker? Thank you for coming out tonight. I'm having a hard time reading the first name. Charlotte Gold?
Good evening. I'm Charlotte Gold, and I live at 217 Five Points Road. This project is not intended to be housing for all economic segments. It's a motor court, or lakeside resort, designed to mimic the appearance of a neighborhood. The area is not a slum or a blight. If you haven't visited the land where this project will take place, please come and do so. Having 30% in open space is misleading due to the steep sloping that is incompatible with being built upon. The suggested zoning change proposal claims that the Silver Key proposal meets certain criteria. However, the 2040 comprehensive plan indicates that the Silver Key development is located within an environmental protection corridor. The amount of work necessary to adapt the lot directly contradicts the established criteria regarding the minimal site disturbance. Therefore, it fails to meet those criteria. This project has identified a loophole between the regulations for commercial lodging and using residential construction for commercial purposes, under the guise of the relatively new practice of short-term rentals, like Airbnb and VRBOs. This project is the proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing. There are B&Bs on the lake and motor courts on the lake and throughout the city that are required to meet safety, inspection, and zoning regulations. Hot Springs is not alone. Fayetteville and Little Rock are also deciding on best practices for the short-term rentals. Given the size and scope of 25 to 28 new construction buildings, there is no reason to rush through a zoning change to accommodate this project. Measure twice, cut only once. Please send this project back to the Planning Commission. Vote against the zoning change. Thank you.
Any questions of the speaker? Thank you. Ms. Sharon Summers, please come forward and restate your name and address, please, and district.
My name is Sharon Summers. I live at 209 Ramble Street. I actually am in District 1. However, I'm here to support friends and people I know in the area. Actually, I think most everything I was going to say has been said. I do think that there has been a lot of back and forth about whether it's a residential or is it a rental community, and that's the big thing that I'm hearing over and over again. There's a lot of gray area here. Therefore, I ask you to consider the fact that there is not a clear-cut answer to this project and should be considered to either be denied, tabled, whatever you consider to be the best decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mark Toth, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
Good evening. My name is Mark Toth. I live at 110 Montclair Lane in the Whittington Valley. That's District 1. What you're hearing tonight is the issue of commercial encroachment. That there's a commercial activity that wants to come into a residential area, and the homeowners who desire a peaceful, quiet residential setting will no longer have that when this 100-bed facility project comes in, because it's going to be commercial. It's going to be short-term rentals. But there's one thing that has not been mentioned tonight. This development, if denied, will come back as houses. The property owners have filed with the Planning Commission the exact same plans, the exact same designs, with the explicit rule that it will be residential. So this talk about losing money, about, that this all these wonderful side benefits aren't going to come, they're going to come. And the neighborhood would be pleased to see it come in as houses. Okay, so let's be clear on that. They talk about the tax base. You're going to have the tax base. You're going to have those jobs created when this comes through, when it's built as houses instead of rentals. This is the thing that I think has not been mentioned, but I think it's critical in your thinking here. Because when it comes to people's houses, this is probably their single largest investment. And to have it chipped away at, to have the borders chipped away as commercial properties try and come in, disrupts the quiet enjoyment that we all want. And, I look around the board here, and you've all had this, or many of you have had this issue in your own neighborhood. I know Elaine has. Director Dodd Smith, the mayor has had this when he lived up on Quapaw. These issues come up, and we have to protect the housing people. We have to respect the residents, because to do otherwise is to just ignore zoning. And the rule of zoning is like with like. You put houses with houses and businesses with businesses, and you try and keep them apart. And if you don't do that, why have zoning? And when you don't have zoning, you don't have a functioning city. Thank you very much.
Any questions of the speaker? Thank you. Mr. Skip Houston, please. Mr. Skip Houston, please come forward and restate your name and address, please.
Good evening. I'm Skip Houston, 155 Five Point Circle, District 5. I'm kind of in between all this development. As most of you know, we have 5 Points Cabins out there. That was established in 1934, probably the oldest place on Lake Hamilton, certainly still the oldest one in the family. The last year or so, I've gotten to know Joe France, and we've had mostly cordial dealings as he's been developing primarily the old Wayward Winds property, which I think they're calling Hot Springs Hotel. And we mostly had cordial dealings. He's a nice guy. I think he's probably just like most everybody's trying to make money. We're all trying to make money. We're all trying to make a living in this world. On this situation, I've got to differ and support our neighbors up there in the subdivision. That was a subdivision, that was that my folks platted out and sold back in the late 50s, early 60s. The Botters, who had central bowling lanes for many years, bought the property that's now in question, and they were longtime customers of ours at the cabins, and then moved up here in the mid-50s. Doing what you're proposing here would forever change the complexion of that neighborhood. There was people down there, many of them have lived there for many years, 30 years or longer maybe on a couple of cases, and they've kind of invested their life in that place, in that area there. And if you change that by allowing the heavy traffic that would bring through there, it's going to forever change that complexion of the neighborhood. The Hot Springs Resort that they're currently developing is a long way from, it's not even finished with dirt work after about a year now. So that was mentioned as a number of units that would be added in that area too. Buena Vista Road is capable of handling a lot more traffic than 5 Points Road is, even if it were improved somewhat. The other thing I would mention in trying to keep with the time frame is that short-term rentals is a pretty nebulous area, and it's kind of a slippery slope when you come down to it. That's why the city's dealing with regulations on short-term rentals, I believe. This would drastically increase the traffic on 5 Points Road, and that, if you look at it on the map that was up there a while ago, and I believe you'll have those maps, that's a long way around. I would alternatively suggest that if all entry was allowed off of Aberena, it would cut a quarter mile off the distance to the highway into things in town. That would be an alternative. I know kind of the topography behind there. It might be a little difficult, but it would certainly be an alternative entry to that area. Pardon me. And the other thing I would just say is that I would urge you to at least delay approval of this. Get more information, get more data, get more, some of this is kind of balls juggling in the air, get more hard facts about this before you approve something that's going to completely change that complexion of that area, that neighborhood down there. You know, the late, great Paul Harvey used to say that a lot of what they call progress isn't, and I think that's a prime example of this. Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions to Mr. Houston? Thank you. That completes those who have signed up to speak on this item. Was there anyone who might have come in a little later that wanted to speak on this issue? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move to
Mr. Mayor?
What? Director Garcia?
I just wanted to say that the question before us tonight is a zoning change request. We're not.
Yeah, we're in the board of directors discussion now.
Okay, but is
Go
it
ahead.
okay
Proceed.
to proceed? So we're talking about a zoning change request. We're not talking about a business plan for income or what the sales tax could possibly be. We're not talking about regulations for STRs, but because of the lack of STRs, in our planning code, it does, as has been mentioned by our planning director and others, it may be gray, it may complicate items that we would be considering. I move to send this zoning request back to the Planning Commission for further review and to answer questions for clarification, including what criteria did the Planning Commission identify as meeting the definition of the planned development, and approving this property as meeting the zoning change request from residential to planned development. How did the Planning Commission utilize the Hot Springs Comprehensive Plan in making the decision to change the zoning code, particularly the maps for areas for environmental and lakeshore protection with the comprehensive plan to be compliant with this request, and how does the proposed project meet criteria of residential and not commercial? Can you pass that to the mayor?
We have a motion to return the item to the Planning Commission as she stated. Is there a second on that motion? Second.
Point of order, I'm sorry, we already have a motion on the floor to approve, so is this amending the existing motion?
Mr. Albright, will you clarify?
Yes, essentially that would be the case. This motion would supersede the motion that's on the floor, the same as tabling, or this would be a remand. The same would be true of a table.
So we have a motion. Did I hear a second?
Yes.
Director Weatherford, we have a motion and a second to return to the Planning Commission. Discussion? I'd like Director Salmon to come back forward, please. Is she available? Did the Planning Commission adequately address the applicant in accordance with our guidelines and standards, ordinances of the City of Hot Springs?
I believe that they did.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask another question?
Director Garcia?
So all of their consideration and discussion was not included in the information that was included in the BARF and sent to us as
All of the information that went to Planning Commission came to the board in the BARF and the attachments.
No, from the Planning Commission. It was mentioned there was no, the minutes do not reflect discussion of the criteria, and therefore it's not clear what criteria was used in these, or if it was considered in their decisions.
I believe that their motion considered the criterion that you were talking about.
It wasn't identified. I'm just asking, it wasn't in the information what they used.
The findings and recommendations from the staff report were included in the motion by Planning Commission to recommend approval. Those were that the requirements of Hot Springs Code Section 16242E were met.
Thank you.
But no mention of the comprehensive plan.
There is no specific finding as to what elements of the comprehensive plan. That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to interject real quick. As someone who has been a planning commissioner, we don't typically, just like we don't here, communicate everything that's going through our mind because it's our job to understand what's in front of us. And so if everyone's in agreement and doesn't have a question, it won't necessarily come up. So
I understand that. It was brought up that there's not STR in our code, so they're having to use what's the next, whatever they can for this decision-making process. So that is a cloud in this because the lack of STR code anywhere in our planning.
I understand, but we also have conditional use for things like hotels and motels. And
But
like
this
residential.
this isn't a conditional use request. That would be different. What we're considering.
Precisely, which is why the STR point isn't necessarily valid. Sorry.
Well, it's included in their application, so it's part of the consideration. That's what they presented us.
Correct.
Any other comments from directors on the topic of tabling, or excuse me, not tabling, returning into the Planning Commission? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
No.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Dobbs-Smith.
Aye.
Director Weatherford.
Yes.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Trusty.
No.
Mayor McCabe.
No. Motion is approved. It returns to the Planning Commission for reconsideration or review. We'll move on to the consent agenda. These are items of a...
Mayor, may I ask a
Yes.
question? What are we looking for going back to the Planning Commission specifically? Is that the list, Karen, that you gave to him? Is that the information we're looking
Ask for further review and to answer those questions.
Okay, I'm just curious what exactly is going to come out of that referral to the Planning Commission. So,
We won't know till we get it back from them. They'll schedule.
but I mean, we need to give them some guidance because they've looked at it. They've recommended approval.
Yeah, we
to
sent
the
back
board.
things back before for further
Okay.
review and questions, and they put it in their normal process. Is that correct, Mayor?
Mr. Albright, is
Now
that correct?
Pardon, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the discussion.
The question relates to what is the Planning Commission directed to review?
It was my understanding by the motion that they were being asked to give further findings on the criteria that they utilized under under 16247E, and also what elements of the comprehensive plan were considered in making this determination.
And it's written out that you can have.
I'll provide it to Harmony.
So we'll make the written motion a part of the record.
Very good. Thank you. At this time, we'll address the consent agenda. These are items of a routine nature that individually do not merit discussion. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved, Mayor.
Got a motion by Director Trustee, seconded by Director Weatherford. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The consent agenda is adopted. Under new business, we have four items. And the first is to consider resolution R2132, and I ask the city attorney to read by title only.
Mayor, this is Resolution R21-32, a resolution awarding annual supply contract for mowing, landscaping, and ground maintenance services at certain Hot Springs City Parks and Trails locations to Hot Springs Landscaping and Maintenance LLC. That concludes your reading. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you. We got a motion and a second. Staff report will be provided by Mr. Anthony Whittington, Parks and Trails Director. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Excuse me. Staff recommends awarding a mow contract to Hot Springs Landscaping and Maintenance LLC for certain city parks and trails as identified in Group B, as in boy, of the mowing and landscape services specifications. The city's mow contract is an annual supply contract with two 12-month extensions. 3 companies submitted bids: Ground Control Lawn Service, Hot Springs Landscaping, and U.S. Lawns. All contractors submitted a bid for each location in the service in Groups A for airport, B parks, C public works, and D rain gardens. Staff has reviewed all 3 bids and is recommending that in the best interest of the city, awards be made to the lowest responsive bidders of each defined groups rather than one contractor for the entire list of properties. Hot Springs Landscaping and Maintenance LLC is the lowest responsive bidder for the property set forth in the supplemental bid form B, which is Parks and Trails. This award will be an annual supply contract for the amount not to exceed annual budgetary constraints. Further, staff is recommending that if for any reason Hot Springs Landscaping is unable to fill their duties listed in the contract, staff may contact the company with the next lowest bid to fulfill the remainder of the contract. This means the city would have a backup company in place if Hot Springs Landscaping cannot fulfill their contractual obligations for any reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Anthony Whittington?
Is there a
Director.
representative from Hot Springs Landscaping and Maintenance to speak?
Do we have well, let's first of all, let's address Mr. Whittington. Do we have any questions of Mr. Whittington? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Do we have we didn't have anybody sign up to speak on this issue.
Oh, then I had some questions, but I thought if a representative from the company was here, I would ask them. If not, I'll have.
I'm Josh Cassidy
Okay.
with Hot Springs Landscaping.
Thank you. Your address, please.
My address is 14 Arilla Lane, Hot Springs Village.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to make sure that everything was in order to fulfill the contract. In the public records, it reflects that you had a foreclosure and equipment repossessed. Was that equipment repossession loan equipment you'd be using in this contract?
That is incorrect, Director Garcia. We did not have a foreclosure, nor was anything repossessed.
Well, then they've got some court cases in the public records incorrect.
Yes, ma'am. I don't think there's anything incorrect. Actually, back in about a year ago, we were building a house here in town, and we had roughly 20 acres outside of town, and we had an issue with the contractor. It did end up with an issue with the bank, but we personally paid that loan off in full. There was no foreclosure. It was dismissed. It wasn't anything to do with us, but it was a personal matter. It had nothing to do with Hot Springs Landscaping.
And there was a garnishment placed. Do you understand that if the court sends the garnishment to the city of Hot Springs, they would have to honor that if requested against your contract?
There is no garnishment to my knowledge.
Well, it hasn't been closed on the public records, and that was Hot Springs Landscaping.
No, ma'am. There is no garnishment to Hot Springs Landscaping, not to my knowledge. But as far as that goes, Hot Springs Landscaping is very financially sound. There's no issue with Hot Springs Landscaping. We love Hot Springs. We mowed for it all last year. To my knowledge, we had no issues. And these things that you're talking about were going on then, but are closed. There was nothing. It was just a legal matter that was in a personal side, But as far as having anything to do with Hot Springs Landscaping, I'm not aware of anything like that.
There are open cases currently, as of today, against Hot Springs Landscaping listed in the Garland County records. So
it would be not. It would be not to my knowledge, no, ma'am.
You might want to
it
follow.
may be something that hasn't showed to be closed, but there's nothing to Hot Springs Landscaping to my knowledge whatsoever.
Okay, so there was one. You're saying never?
No, ma'am. I said there is not anything to my knowledge about Hot Springs Landscaping with any issues with a court case.
Oh, well, they're showing cases open, so you may want to check them.
We can. I'll have our attorney check that, but we're in no current issues with anything in any court case whatsoever. No repossession. I have no idea what you're talking about, to be honest.
Okay, well, I'd be glad to send it to you so you could.
Look it up, but
if it was me, I'd want to get it cleared up.
Well, thank you for telling me, but I don't think there is that I know of.
How many businesses do you operate?
Do we operate?
How many businesses do you have?
In Garland County? Or anywhere?
Businesses and customers.
Over the years, there have been several, but as far as none at this moment. Now, my wife is a realtor, so that makes her a independent contractor, so she would have an LLC, but as far as operating a business, Hot Springs Landscaping is our business. We also have Echo Valley Landscaping that we do some residential type stuff on, but we don't do really anything with Echo Valley.
So Hot Springs Landscaping is your only business?
It's Hot Springs Landscaping's only business, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
Any discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
No.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. The time we'll consider ordinance 02121. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So moved.
Director Trustee, seconded by Director Weatherford. We have a motion and second to suspend the rules, read by title only. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Please read by title.
Mayor, this is ordinance 021-21, an ordinance waiving the requirements of competitive bidding and approving the purchase of residential waste containers from Waste Quip. That concludes your reading. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Director Jones, seconded by Director Trustee, and Mr. Randy Atkinson, Solid Waste Director, will provide the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and the board. Staff recommends the waive of competitive bidding for the purchase of 1,248 96-gallon residential containers from Waste Quip Incorporated in the amount of $68,692.80. That includes freight and taxes. There's a need to waive competitive bidding because this is a direct purchase from the manufacturer, and they are the sole provider for this container. It's imperative that the city remain consistent with previous containers purchased and in use throughout the city. We budgeted $100,000 in the 2021 budget, so we're coming in well under. Any questions?
Any questions of Mr. Atkinson?
Is this to replace or do?
To add to inventory, sir. Our inventory is getting low, and on occasions, we do have to replace containers throughout the city, so. And the price, according to the manufacturer and all indication, plastic prices are on the rise, so we're wanting to buy 2 loads at one time, while we can get them at this price.
It's not going down.
No, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And we have room to store these?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion amongst directors? We didn't have anybody sign up to speak on this issue, so discussion amongst directors. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Dobbs-Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. This time we'll consider ordinance 02122, and I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So move.
Director Trustee, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. All in favor of the motion to suspend the rules to read by title only, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Please read by title.
Ordinance 021-22, an ordinance approving the filing of a bed and breakfast private club permit application by Reserve LLC for a facility to be located at 2300, 2330 Central Avenue, Hot Springs, Arkansas. That concludes your reading. If you would, entertain the motion. Second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Got a motion by Director Jones, seconded by.
Second.
Who made the second? Director Dobbs-Smith. Thank you. Well, okay. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, I'll be
Ms.
providing that,
Harmony.
Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Arkansas law requires applicants for private club permits to obtain approval of the governing body of the city where the private club is to be located. The approval must come in the form of an ordinance, which is a required attachment to the State of Arkansas Alcoholic Beverage Control Division application for private club. The property on which the Reserve LLC plans their bread and breakfast is 2300 and 2330 Central Avenue. The permitted area would be the 2 structures that would serve as the bed and breakfast. None of the grounds are included in the proposed footprint of the permitted area. And I will put that on the screen for you. It is worth noting that the bed and breakfast private club permit is slightly different than a traditional private club permit application, as the applicant does not have to be a nonprofit. Additionally, the applicant does not have to provide a list of members, as the licensed bed and breakfast may serve beer and wine only to registered lodging guests. All other documentation in their application has been provided and is attached in your report. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends that the board approves the applicant's filing of this application with the State of Arkansas Alcoholic Beverage Control. That concludes my report. We do have a representative, Mr. Rick Williams, with us this evening.
Very good. Mr. Williams, would you like to come forward and tell us your project, please? Restate your name and address. And
Rick Williams, 114 Catalpa Circle, Hot Springs. You guys probably drive by the W.C. Brown Estate and see the horse. A lot of exciting development there. I've recently purchased the Best Court as well, which W.C. Brown's sister built that in 1933. This bed and breakfast is probably going to be one of the top in the country. As y'all probably seen in the paper the other day, we had Aaron Rodgers and his fiancee in for dinner. We've actually brought in some from the Windsor out of Florida, several chefs and restaurant staff that really, I think, are going to add to Hot Springs, and we're going to hopefully bring more Aaron Rodgers is into Hot Springs, so we have a national footprint, and so we can share our historic treasures. But I think you guys will be very pleased with the end result when we get it done.
any questions to Mr. Williams?
Yes. Rick, what's the timing on the finishing the development opening for business?
We're probably about 60 days,
Okay.
45 to 60.
Okay. Looks good. We drive by there frequently.
Yes, sir, thank you.
They both look good.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Any discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Weatherford. Aye. Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holiday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Our final action item of the evening is to consider ordinance 02123. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Director Jones and Director Holliday. All in favor of the motion to suspend the rules and read by title only signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Did I get the name wrong?
You do all the time.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Aaron will take care of it.
I got it.
Well, we can't hardly see Aaron down there anyway,
Really here.
She's in the orchestra pit over here.
I am the orchestra, come on.
Well, I feel bad. I can hardly see Erin over there, and I got to get her in the minutes somehow.
Okay.
Now, please correct the minutes. So now where are we at?
All in favor of the motion in a
All in
second.
favor.
All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Please read by title.
Ordinance 021-23, an ordinance governing the construction, installation, maintenance, and removal of small wireless communication facilities in the right-of-way in compliance with certain orders of the Federal Communication Commission and Act 999 of 2019, declaring an emergency and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Director Weatherford, seconded by Director Trustee.
Yes, sir.
Do we have Miss Kathy Selman's going to come forward and provide us a staff report? Planning and Development Director, welcome.
Yes. Thank you very much. The ordinance proposes to encourage wireless infrastructure investment and to provide a fair and predictable process for deploying small wireless facilities, often called 5G, in a manner that is safe, compatible with, and complementary to the provision of services by the city and others using the rights of way, and consistent with the aesthetic standards of the city. Small wireless facilities are capable of delivering wireless access to advanced technology, broadband, and 911 services to residences, businesses, and schools within the city. Such facilities are often deployed within a city's public right-of-way. While the city is willing to permit wireless providers to occupy its rights-of-way for placement or installation of small wireless facilities, poles, wireless support structures, attachment, and wireline backhaul facilities, it also wishes to preserve its rights to own and operate and manage its property in a proprietary manner while fairly governing the conduct of business and access to those rights of way. The city is willing to negotiate placement of small wireless facilities on city lands and structures, such as buildings, recreational field lighting, and the like, but this specifically looks at rights of way. The ordinance recognizes specific areas where decorative lighting and poles are the standard, both now and for future poles, and those areas are listed in the ordinance. Additionally, new or existing poles within the boundaries of a board-approved central business improvement district within the Malvern Avenue overlay zone, or poles for streetlights accepted for city maintenance shall be subject to enhanced standards as applicable. We hope in the future to have pictures of small cell devices that are acceptable, and by ordinance to supplement the document which you're considering tonight, so that we have an appendix with those pictures. Conway and North Little Rock do this. They've had really good results. It would give us pre-approved designs that don't require additional analysis and would allow for expeditious review and approval of wireless facility applications. Any design that doesn't look like the picture, when we get the picture, would either have to meet the ordinance standard or get the device illustration added to the Appendix B by amendment or obtain a waiver. New poles will be metal, and they're subject to the basic requirements that we have for city poles. We are requesting to declare an emergency. Service providers already have contacted the city regarding anticipated installation of small cell equipment, and their timeline is very short. Given an imminent need, it appears to be in the city's best interest to declare an emergency so that this ordinance will be in full force and effect upon approval. And that concludes the presentation.
Very good. Any questions of Ms. Selman? Director Garcia.
Thank you, Ms. Selman. We mentioned last week about the National League of Cities had stated that a number of cities have this when they do the negotiations or they have the application returned, that they're providing to a nonprofit free wireless access. Is that, it's not part of this ordinance, but is that something that can be on the application? That are you willing to provide, so, they're thinking about it, and, if they wanted to provide it to Jackson House or Webb Center or, any other, or, if we have a homeless shelter, those, anything that would qualify, that would be showing good community service as well.
Is there any barrier to doing that?
We can certainly make that information available to them as they make applications, but many times the types of facilities that we're talking about, the antennas themselves, are not always the retail provider. Many times it's a management company.
A contractor?
Right.
But it's something that could, we could make it available, so if they choose to do that.
Right, make it available, share the information, but couldn't be a requirement.
Okay, right. Okay, I didn't mean it as a requirement, just as a volunteer if they, thank you.
Director Holliday.
I'm glad I got your attention. And I'm sorry if I missed it, but when you're talking about the pictures that we're adding in the appendix, and then you asked for the emergency clause, how do those two things overlap from a time frame standpoint?
We are right now looking for devices that appear to meet our needs, and are working with other communities to see what they are doing. And in the meantime, we would have to, on a one-by-one kind of basis, review what is being proposed and how that would fit.
Can I just chime in here real quick?
Please.
Sure.
Essentially what Ms. Selman is talking about is what we've been referring to as an over-the-counter approved device configuration. And so if they have that, they have an expedited approval. It's almost immediate. If not, it has to go through engineering, which slows down the process for everyone.
Thank you. Any further questions of Ms. Selman?
I have one.
Yes.
Right now, you said you've been contacted by
We have.
folks. Do they can't just go out in our right of way and construct something
No.
to provide service. So what are they contacted for? Telling you that they're coming soon? They're
Yes.
coming next week, or they're coming a month from now?
They
or-
are contacting us to find out what our requirements are.
Okay.
And we would like to be able to tell them what our requirements are.
Okay.
Director, or Mr. Albright.
And under the FCC and state law, we have a shot clock. If they do, other than calling and general inquiry,
Yeah.
if they submit an application, we have a shot clock for approval.
Well, and that's what I read in part of this, that about state and federal law, to the extent that it preempts local control.
It preempts many aspects of it. We
Okay.
have kind of picked out of what's left those things that we are able to set standards, and that's what appears in this ordinance.
And that prompted the question, under state or federal law, they're not allowed to put these devices within our rights-of-way without making application to us.
They have to apply to us,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, very, thank you. I just want to be clear.
But clarification, Ms. Selman, you had worked up this beautiful ordinance previously, and then we were going to act on it, but then the federal government made changes that what we included regarding historic districts could not be included. So we had to, had to wipe that slate clean and start over to make sure we didn't have any exclusions that the federal government would no longer allow.
Right. And what we can do is minimal. And
Right.
we have actually wiped the slate clean twice. So we think where we are now is where we can be, and finds that balance point. So if something is in a historic district, it is going to have to get a historic district commission approval, but that's about as far as we can go.
Essentially, we have a preemption from the FCC, and then when the state passed their statute, they occupied the field, and so the home rule doesn't apply for us. We have to do what the state said we can do. The aesthetics is, about the only thing that we could control. I did want to point out, because we have so many state highways in Hot Springs, Malvern, Grand, Central, Higdon Ferry, all of those rights of ways are state rights of ways, and so we don't control those.
The state has a similar process of permitting
Well, we have
along
asked,
those state highways?
We have asked repeatedly, RDOT, if they would, talk with us about having a standardized over-the-counter approval. They don't. They don't care. They don't want to talk about it. So we would have liked to have had something that they were going to approve on Malvern, Central, Grand, so forth, so that we could be on the same page and everything would look,
The same.
similar as you went through town, other than the decorative poles, which you have the street segments that are laid out there, convention, downtown.
But
And
those-
all poles must be metal. We're not allowing wooden poles, although the state may.
Well, that's what I say. Can the state allow that along Malvern Avenue or
Yes.
along Central Avenue in
Yes,
front of?
it's their right of way.
Okay.
Very good, thank you. Any further questions, Ms. Salmon? She's kind of doing the Michael Jackson backwards walk. Anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to this issue? Discussion amongst directors? Call the roll.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye, ordinance is adopted, and we have a emergency clause.
Yes, Mayor. Paragraph 2 of your ordinance contains the emergency clause. I'll read it in its entirety. It is hereby found and determined that improved data connectivity would improve the city's economy, enhance the ability of its citizens to share information, and that adoption of a new regulation governing the installation, maintenance, and removal of small wireless communication facilities in the city's rights-of-way is necessary to achieve these benefits in a manner that is consistent with broad city interest, including the proper and orderly growth of the city, and being necessary for the immediate preservation of the public health, safety, and welfare. Therefore, emergency is hereby declared to exist, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage and approval. That concludes your emergency clause. If you would entertain a motion in a second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Dobbs Smith.
I think you're just blocking out
We're gonna-
Director
we're gonna-
Garcia right now.
Director Weatherford and Director Garcia.
Mayor getting
All-
sleepy.
We're just going to say all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Unanimous approval of the emergency clause. The board commentary, any board commentary? Oh, that's something different. So, board directors, items for discussion, I'll put it that way, items for discussion.
Mayor, I was just going to Miss Selman's still here, I was going to brag on her a little bit. Every now and then I have to do that. You know, the kids put me in the category of the old people. Well, the old people in my district was just thrilled to get those sidewalks where they could walk from that high rise to the Dodge store to get their goodies or whatever they buy there. They'd say they sell a lot of beer and biscuits at that store. But anyway,
Got a
I
B&B?
appreciate that more than you know. No, I haven't been there, man. I also appreciate the sidewalks that the kids are getting for school. If they feel like the old folks feel, it's gonna really be a great addition to that end of town for the school kids. And I appreciate you, because I know you had a lot to do with it, you and your staff.
It's a huge team that makes that all run.
I know, it works fine. Ma'am, you got any more for me to say?
Well, you're gonna bring us home, right?
Yes, sir. Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Well, I move that we adjourn for the night.
Second.
I'll second that if we need
All
to.
right.
Everybody seconded that one. So, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. If you don't leave, just
Just think if we started.
Is there a chance
have
to,
it.
is there a chance